Hi there. Thanks very much for your interest in pricing. So, first, a couple of slides on why I got into this field. I've been running a few companies here and in Europe, and in doing so, I did some experiments with pricing. And some of those completely blew up, where others were very successful. And what I learned in business school didn't help me. It was the books I could read about pricing. They were too academic, nothing that I could take and use practically in my business. Then, of course, there's a lot of mumbo jumbo about pricing, like it would be a black art, and is not. So I decided to make pricing practical, develop IP on how to make pricing practical as a sort of a business regime, and and build a company around that IP, and that company is Atenga. But to start off, we like to say that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and the first of those giants is Peter Drucker, and he said that customers rarely buy what companies think they're selling them. And with that, he summarized how incredibly difficult it really is for us all as business leaders to understand our customers in such a way that we can serve them better, we can gain pricing power, and we can earn the right to increase prices. Warren Buffett says that pricing power is the most important criterion for evaluating a business. And with pricing power here, he means the ability to increase prices without losing customers. And when you price right, you typically gain twice the growth and twice the profitability. And as a result of that, you often see a more than doubling of shareholder value. Now, going to startup companies, because I know, of course, many of you are entrepreneurs. McKinsey, some 10 years ago, said that 80% of startup failures are due to pricing errors. Sounds a little bit much to me, but who knows? Then the Wall Street Journal in September issued a similar report. They had interviewed 104 ex-CEOs of ex-companies, and these people said that no market need was the main reason. And I like to say that if you price right, there's almost always a market for your product. And likewise, they said that competition was too strong. And again, if you price right, you kill your competition. So, in fact, both of these studies really says the same thing, that in a startup scenario, pricing right is tremendously important. Okay? So, for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to talk really about two things: willingness to pay and decision drivers and value drivers. But I'm going to start with a small case study. I did this short stint at marketing VP for a company called Exanet. And it was the ludicrous way that the company priced that spurred me into this business. Here's what they did. They were trying to find competitors' price lists, and the best they can typically do was to get a last year price list. And of course, the price list is a price list. It doesn't say at what price they actually sold. Then they tried to figure out the market price for cent per gigabyte. And unless you're in pork bellies or oil, where the market price are always published, this becomes a guess. And then because they had some specific value, they thought, they very carefully calculated a fudge factor completely based on gut feel and added that to the guess of industry per gigabyte. And then at the end of the day, they discounted to any price to get the deal. The result of all this was $70 million in investment. 9 million of those were returned to investors in an asset sale in bankruptcy. But now we need to go a little technical. We're going to talk about the inner living of pricing. And we start with price elasticity. And most of you know what it is. It measures how sales level change as different prices are considered. And this is how they teach you in business school, as a straight line. With the lower the price, the higher the volume. Reality, as you will see, is different. But because you have price and you have volume, you can also calculate where the revenues will be. But let's talk about the psychology of pricing. Whenever we make a decision to buy or not, there's really only two judgments that we use. We can say, is it too expensive or not? And more often than not, we think it's expensive not because we don't have the money, but because the seller has failed to deliver a unique differentiator and a unique value message. And in fact, most companies are out there trying to sell to the wrong people with the wrong message and the wrong price. And it doesn't work all that well. So the other message that price gives us is whether something is too cheap. For example, even though it's come down quite a bit lately, if somebody offered you gas at 61 cents, would you think it's just too cheap, that it would damage your car? Let me illustrate this with a personal story. I was in Vegas, I needed a haircut, and on the way to the convention center, I passed this sign, $9 for a haircut. To me, that's a message of inferior quality. So I passed. And so is $12. And in the end, I paid my $20 or $25 where there were no signs at all. And I don't know if that $20 haircut was any better than the $9 haircut, but I didn't want to find out. Okay? So, some companies, though, they say that their customers make a technical evaluation and simply buy what's cheapest. And of course, that do happen sometimes. But in most cases, there are judgments involved. How do your customers believe you're going to meet or exceed specs? How you're going to deal with guarantees, and how is it doing business with your company, etc. All of that is also taken into account. So, looking at this, there's really two things we have to consider. One, is the product price so high? Is it so expensive that you the buyer won't buy? Or is it so cheap that it becomes a message of inferior quality and the buyer won't buy for that reason? Now, when we map this, it's going to look something like this. The higher the price, if we start at 0, we can assume that no buyers will not buy because it is too expensive. But as we go up in this case to $500, where we say all buyers will not buy because it's too expensive. And the flip side then, if the price is 0, we can assume that all buyers are saying that it is a message of inferior quality and therefore nobody will buy. But as the price goes up, in this case to $250, all buyers says that the price is a message of inadequate quality. And this means that business would only happen within this triangle here. And in fact, this is where the price is below the price where people say it's affordable, and above the price where buyers say it is no good. So in this case, the market share optimized price would be $175. But more on the psychology of pricing. We all know the 99s. But why does it work? Because it do work. Well, it's because when we read a price, the very first digit becomes an anchor. So we actually do not take as much account of what's to the right of that 2. It is the 2 that really matters, and we really truly believe that $2.99 is cheaper than 3. That's how we work. In fact, there are empirical research out there saying that under some circumstances you can increase customer spend with 20% by pricing on the 99. And one more thing on the psychology, and that is what we call price walls. Price walls are places where a small price change can simply halt your business if you do it in the wrong way. I'm going to illustrate this with this company selling medical instrument trays. And here we see the real demand curve, a little different than what you saw and what is taught in business school. And you see a very clear crest, and to the left of that crest, as prices go down, fewer and fewer potential buyers believe that the quality is going to be adequate. And to the right of that crest, you have the opposite then, that as prices goes up, more and more people can't afford it. And this means that the market share optimized price in this case would be $199. And because we have price and we have volume, we can calculate the revenue curve. And as you can see, it's quite spiky. And when we look at this, we can see that max revenue would come at $299, and max revenue and profit will come at $399. And then we have the dreaded price wall. In this case, if this company would price its product, go from $499 to $500, they will actually lose 2/3 of the revenue. But of course, the opposite is also true. If you go from $500 to $499, they will triple their revenue. So it goes both ways. This particular company was at $650, so not the right place to be. And of course, they were not a market leader in any way. But the fix here is so simple. It's obviously just to lower the price a little bit. But let me talk about drivers, and I want to illustrate this with a CRO. A CRO help biotech companies to manage the clinical trial process and the FDA approval process. So they do process outsourcing. In this case, we measure decision drivers of their customers or their marketplace, but we also measured what they internally thought about their own customers. And what we found was very interesting. I'm going to show you the most and the least important of these decision drivers. The most important driver is therapeutic experience. And we can see here that customer thought this was very important, and the company didn't think it was very important at all. Now, how could that be? Well, it's really very simple, and that is because customers lie. This particular CRO only had one location, and it was very easy as they followed up on all the people they lost business to, for the prospect to say, you're not in the Bay Area, you're not in Virginia, you only have your one location in San Diego, and therefore I'm not going to do business with you. The company couldn't argue with it because it was true. And in most cases, it was just a lie of the customer to get them off the phone, to end the conversation, because there was nothing to talk about. So, if we then look at therapeutic experience, what are we going to find? Well, first off, this is a measure of the company's management team, what they thought their therapeutic experience are. I know you can't read it, that's not the point. The point is that they had experience of more than 30 different therapeutic areas, but even within the management team, only 3/4 of them knew that they had experience with cancer drugs or cancer drug development. And only a single person knew that they had experience with fertility and hormone therapy and so forth. And as a result, this generated a tremendous amount of confusion. In the red here, you can see what the customer thought their therapeutic experience was. And a confused customer doesn't buy. He takes his business somewhere else. And this was again because the company was so focused on process and they didn't think that the actual therapeutic experience was important because it was the same process no matter what the drug was. Okay? But the fix was very simple. It was to develop service bundles, really just marketing literature and website content, to explain the various services the company had in the context of different therapeutic areas. So if you were looking for help to go through the FDA approval process or your clinical trial process for pain medication or pain management, you could read how the services specifically was used in your case, even though whether it's pain management or fertility drugs or anything else, the process is the same. The result here was about 25% new business in 9 months, and also a higher willingness to pay, about 12%. So again, how could they be so wrong? Well, it's again that lying customer. Now, not every customer lie every time. Okay, sometimes customers tell the truth, sometimes they lie, but more often than not, they withhold information. And they withhold information because they think that by withholding that information, they will gain some kind of future advantage. And very particularly, they want you to believe that you do not have pricing power. Okay? That you are a commodity, where price is the most important decision driver. Now, these lying customers, it generates like a gut feel about your market that is not completely wrong, but it's not completely right either. Okay? And let me continue to tell you how this can affect the business. I'm going to talk about a specialty chemical manufacturer. They were very adamant that the market for their specialty chemicals should be made in batches of 2,000 liters, and that in their market everything else was peanuts. But in the research that went out to the entire market, what was found was that this 2,000 liters was really only applicable for about a quarter of the market. How could that happen? Okay. Well, they had a very strong marketing message on the benefits of 2,000 liter batches. And their customers, therefore, was those who wanted 2,000 liter batches. And then the company asked their customers all the time what they wanted, and they said 2,000 liter batches because they were all self-selected. And the company never bothered to reach out to the entire marketplace and find out what they wanted. So as we wrapped up that project, the CEO leaned to the manufacturing VP and said that by next Monday he really wanted to have plans for how they can make other batch sizes. This was, of course, late Friday. But let's talk about some mistakes. Mistakes in pricing and mistakes in marketing and product development and so forth. All right, you don't want to drink from that cup, I can tell you. One of the most important mistakes and common mistakes is to believe that the market is homogeneous, that every potential customer have the same criterion for buying, have the same value drivers, have the same willingness to pay. That is just never the case. Another very often popular, very, very frequent mistake is to see price as divorced from your entire business process. It is not. Price cannot be an afterthought. It has to be part of the regular business process. Guessing price is always a popular way of getting it wrong, as is finding a price that feels good. And all this believes that all of this means that you're not going to be on target. You may come in the neighborhood, but you're not gonna be spot on. In fact, most of the time when companies come to our company, to Atenga, with a pricing problem, a downward pricing pressure, whatever, most often what we find is that they have a marketing and sales problem that it shows up in pricing. So pricing is where you have the symptoms, but the disease is further back in the process. So let me illustrate how well or not it can go when you use guesswork. This company is selling content to other businesses, and for one content package, they had decided that the price is going to be $350, and that was okay, sort of for revenue point of view, but in market share, it certainly left a lot of market share on the table, so to speak. So we recommended them that they should decrease their price to $199, and in doing so, revenue will be about the same, but market share will go up with some 50%. And likewise, they had a bundle of 3 of these content packages, and they had priced them at $525, just on the wrong side of that price wall at $500. So the fix here was also very easy. It was just lowering the price to $499, and in doing so, both market share and revenues increased with some 25-30%. And in fact, as we discussed this with the CEO of the company, they started to grow 5% a month after being flat for years. Cost plus is also one of the most popular way of pricing wrong. Different industries have different sort of rule of thumb markups, and in this case I just said that cost is 5, and if you add various markups times 1.5 times 2 times 3 times 10, you'll end up somewhere on that curve, but not where you want to be, okay, like you can see here. And let me show you an example on that. This company sells ceiling speakers, 6.5-inch ceiling speakers. Their landed cost was $25, so they simply doubled it to $50. And as you can see, every time they sold, they left an enormous amount of money on the table. And this is what happened when you guess. And again, this market price, which somebody believes is the right thing to do, market price only works again if you're in pork bellies or oil and commodities that where the price is actually published. Otherwise, it is a guess. Targeting a competitor is never a good idea. We did a job for Rainbird, the sprinkler manufacturer, for their golf course division, and for that reason I went to this trade show, and the 2 market leaders in tractors and maintenance equipment are Toro and John Deere, and they had big slick booths. They looked very professional, and across the aisle there was this no-name company. They didn't have a booth. It was just floor space and these machines. Their salespeople looked like they'd been sleeping in their cars, and it was very, very unprofessional. So eventually I managed to navigate my way to the owner of the company. I asked him, how do you price? And he said, he pointed across the aisle towards Toro, and he said, just like them, but 20% cheaper. And if you do, you're never going to have the resource to do anything right in your company. You're never going to have a resource to innovate. You're never going to have resource to market yourself properly, and so forth. It's not a good idea to price against a competitor. So, since all of these mistakes generates inferior business results, what is the better play? What is the better way? Well, we call it a deep dive into a marketplace and to measure perceptions, drivers, and willingness to pay. And that dive needs to be anonymous, because if it's not anonymous, we have a situation where clients, customers, they all lie again. They may say things that they think you want to hear and they would withhold information. But when you use anonymous third-party research, they don't know who would benefit, so they tell the truth. And price, because price needs, it doesn't live in a vacuum. You have to also measure everything else, not only willingness to pay. You have to measure the decision landscape, the decision drivers, and the value drivers. You have to understand how people make their choices, how they make their perceptions, or what perceptions they have about you and your competitors. And you should also measure satisfaction and dissatisfaction. I mean, if you knew what dissatisfied your competitors' customers, could you not use that as an advantage? I think you can. And of course, you have to measure your customers and your non-customers' willingness to pay. And in fact, we'd like to say that you need to talk to three groups when you do these projects. You need to talk to customers, to prospects, and to strangers. And strangers are people that possibly don't even know that your company exists, but that you could do business with if you only knew, and if you knew what they wanted. And all of this leads your company to differentiate. And it's differentiation that provides pricing power. Let me show you another short example on pricing power. We all know that gas is more expensive when the gas station is by the freeway on-ramp, okay? Taking advantage of convenience. But prices are also higher in the middle of the nowhere. And I'm sure you know that in between here and Vegas, there's just after Baker, there's a fairly long stretch with only a single gas station. And this is, in fact, the gas station. Gas there is about twice of what it normally should be. And of course, very few people fill up there, but for those who do, it's very profitable for the company. And people are willing to pay those high prices because it's still more convenient and simpler and quicker than running out in the middle of the desert. So if setting up a gas station is in your future, location will give you pricing power. But the way you sell can also give you pricing power. It used to be that engines to commercial planes were as expensive as the plane itself and were an impediment to sale. So these guys, the engine vendors, came up with the idea to, instead of charging a price for the engine, they charge per hour of use instead. Very simple but clever, and suddenly that impediment to sales were gone. And then it's also about targeting the right customer. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, talk a little bit about a dash cam. Okay, in my mind, a typical customer for a dash cam would be somebody like that. Okay, but then when we did the project, we found something very different. And here you can see the demand curve for a dash cam for men and females. And you can see that women have a higher willingness to buy than men. In fact, at any price, selling to females would, for this company, generate between 25 to 30% higher revenues for the same product. So my guess that this was the appropriate customer for this cam, this dash cam, is completely wrong. This is the target audience for that product. And that, of course, changes the entire marketing plan. Where you advertise, what messages you use, yada, 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 yada. So, very important to know this. Some companies shoot themselves in the foot, though. And sometimes this could be very, very easy to fix. And I'm going to show you how. This is a price list for sticky labels. Looks like a normal price list to me. We have a SKU, we have some size information, we have labels per roll, and then we have the price. And the price is even in bold, so it's a message to me as a potential customer that I should look at price more than anything else. Then we look at another price list from another vendor of these sticky labels. In fact, these two are from distributors, and the original manufacturer of the label is the same for these two guys. Here we have product information, we have a value statement, we have more product information, and we have the SKU. But where's the price? Well, the trick is that there is no price. In order to understand what this product will cost, you have to go to a price index. And setting it up this way means that decisions are made without consideration of price. Okay? And it's only once you know what product to buy, you look up the price. Let's look at something similar-ish. A restaurant menu. Here you can see the prices are neatly lined up. So it's very easy for you to make your decision partly based on price, partly based on what you actually want to eat. Here we even have prices, the items are in price order, making the choice for you even easier if you want to buy on price. Compare with this menu. Here you can see prices clearly marked if you look for them, but they're not lined up. They're very difficult to compare in the same way as in the first menu. And in these two cases, the menu case and the sticky label case, what it means when you fix this is that you often get somewhere between a couple of percent, maybe even up to 5% incremental revenue. And this, of course, compounds year after year and is going to make a huge difference for a company. But another story. I was sitting with the pricing VP of about $1 billion manufacturing company. The phone rang. He picked up. He gestured me to stay. And I could hear it was a discussion about a target. Once he was done, he turned to me and he said, it was my CEO, and we discussed the pricing target for next year. And we agreed on 28 million. So the lesson learned here is that this company had a person with staff solely responsible for price, and solely responsible for adding 3% revenue as pure profit every year through pricing actions. Now, few of you runs billion-dollar companies, but the same goes whether you are $1 billion or whether you're just starting out and have a couple of 100,000. And that is that you have to spend time on pricing. You have to spend as much time on pricing as you do on cost cutting and as you do on trying to get more sales. Because you will make money that way. And because these compounds year after year, you will get more money to market yourself, to become more competitive, to increase your shareholder value. Okay? In closing here, there are three more things that belong in pricing. And it's something that we call sales transaction analysis. And just give you some examples here. Typically, you look at contribution margin versus any number of variables, depending on how rich your sales data is. This is how a typical, if you do a scatter shot, this is contribution margin versus total sales per client. And this is how it would look like in almost any company. And then you need to look at these guys at the very bottom. There are lots of small companies and lots of small customers, some with real good margin, some with really bad margin. And you need to think, and in your company, you need to make the decision, what is the cost to serve all those folks? Okay? If we cannot fix the cost to serve, maybe we simply shouldn't do business with them. Maybe we should fire them. Okay, how do you do that? Well, you can put minimum order sizes, for example, and a few of these will go away. Some of these clients may be strategic, and you want to retain them, but you need to have the data in order to ask those questions. For some of these customers, you'll see they have good margins but not enough sales. So try to figure out how could you get them to buy more from you. And in this case, there's one client with good sales level but wrong margin. So what programs can then be put in place to increase the margin for this particular customer? If you look at the same thing for, say, in this case, manufacturers' reps, you have a bunch that are low margin, low sales. Again, same question. What is the cost to serve? Are some of these strategic? Are some new? Can they be trained? Can they be encouraged? Or do you need to fire some of them? And some of them are sort of doing good on margin side, but don't sell to the right potential. What can you do to increase their sales? Just a couple of examples. Typically, you may look at 30, 40 variables, and typically 5, 6, 7 of them really make a difference. Sales process. Now, you've done one of these programs. You've measured the perceptions, the value drivers, decision drivers, willingness to pay. Now, that needs to be turned into a better sales process. Okay? A better sales process where salespeople better know how to prep for each customer interaction, how they can control the conversation so they are in charge and not the customer, and how they can close the deal with no discounts, okay, which is possible. And for the sales management, you have data to allow them to be more effective, how they can increase accountability, how they can better coach the salespeople. And in large companies, there is something used that is called price management software. When you have tens of thousands of SKUs, when you have hundreds of thousands of customers, price management software is often very, very useful. And in those cases, it provides better insights into a company's own pricing practice. And it allows the company to control pricing in a different way and to optimize the pricing. And it provides a framework to better execute on pricing. So, in summary, there is no silver bullet to good pricing. It's about process and execution. And it's about understanding your customers better. But when you price right, it do drive superior business results. And differentiation is what gives you pricing power. And don't believe your customers because they lie. And there's psychology in pricing that you can leverage if you only had the information that I've been talking about in this presentation. And there's psychology, there's anonymous third-party research is the solution to gain all this information. And in sales transaction analysis, you can figure out, doesn't give you answers, but allow you to ask a lot of questions that will help you to better your business. And taking into account everything you learned about your clients and your market into a better sales process. And finally, price management software is a great tool for larger companies. And that, gentlemen, is a wrap. Thank you so much.